Hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Not Just Nintendo, a video game podcast that is about Nintendo. But it's not just Nintendo here at Not Just Nintendo, as I talk about other video games and other video game companies as well. Welcome back, everyone, this time to episode 30 of this here amazing show, the best podcast you listen to on the entire internet. Because obviously, this is the most high-quality, best podcasts, both in audio and in concepts. There's always great ideas over here, and Not Just Nintendo. On an unrelated note, I have absolutely no idea for this episode of Not Just Nintendo. So I've actually been putting it off, recording it for a little while. It's actually pretty late here on a Monday, because I just really just did not know what to do. I also had marching band, but I just also did not know what to do. And so I think for this episode, I do have a little bit of stuff to talk about that I've been playing. Although, to be fair, it is actually, it's quite minuscule. It's quite minuscule, indeed. But that's all right. The good news is, and here's really what I think, I hope really, that a lot of you people will be happy about, is that the podcast will probably be going weekly again, not next week, but the week after. So don't expect an episode on the 27th, but 28th. But expect one on whenever it was supposed to be. So like the 4th of November. And then expect one again on the 11th. That's the plan, unless things change. So I probably shouldn't have announced that, actually. But I'm just going to announce it anyway. What's the worst that could happen, other than I lie? So, episode on the 4th is the next episode. And then, of course, on hopefully on the 11th. Because Marching Band is ending. Marching Band is done this week. We had our second-to-last competition 2 days ago when I'm recording this. It was last Saturday. And so the final competition, the championship, where we're definitely, totally going to win, is this coming Saturday. So that's going to be done next weekend. So that's pretty crazy. And, it's not like I've just been waiting for this to happen, right? Like, nobody take this the wrong way. If anybody knows me in real life and, like, is also part of the marching band, don't take this the wrong way that I've been, like, waiting for this to end. But I have also been kind of waiting for this to end because, yes, to be fair, my schedule will clear up quite a bit, and I will be able to make a lot more videos and stuff. I know things have been real slow, and I keep saying there's going to be a video, and there's not, and it's a mess. But things will clear up real soon. I think November, there'll be a lot of videos. In November. I'm also going to work on some pretty big things that probably won't really come together until next year. But that'll all be for the future. Let's not get too into that right now. I'm just stalling. So, and I'm not Joseph, but I am stalling. So, for this episode, I am going to talk a little bit about. I bought 2 games. 2 games I bought at a store. I know, crazy idea, going to a store and buying video games. I know. Most people don't seem to care. I like to go to my stores and buy my video games. Anyways, so I have 2 games I bought at a store, and then I also played one of them. I know, crazy idea, playing the games you buy when you buy them. I do not generally do that, but I did actually start something pretty much as soon as I bought it. And that's going to be that. Then we're going to talk about some news in the second segment. So this is probably going to be a little bit shorter, but that's okay. Because, like I said, this is the last time that a show will be affected by marching band. Well, okay, actually, to be fair, next show will be kind of affected by marching band. Because rather than 2 full weeks to play stuff, I'll have had like 1, really. But that's okay. Pretty soon, marching band will not be affecting the podcast, its release schedule, any of that stuff. I am also looking into putting the podcast on more platforms. Right now, it's on Spotify, Amazon Podcasts. I think that's what that's called, right? Amazon Podcasts or Amazon Music and Podcast, whatever it's called, the Amazon one. And then obviously it's on YouTube. And I think it might be on like one other weird thing that nobody uses because it like linked through Amazon Music, so I should probably figure that out for sure. But I'm planning to get it on some other places. It might even be on Pocket Casts, but I definitely want to get it on Pocket Casts. I know a couple people in person have actually asked me why I don't have it on Apple Podcasts, and to be honest, it's because I don't have an iPhone. I don't have any Apple stuff. And it's, believe it or not, it's actually very difficult to make an Apple account without Apple stuff. Like, they really try to get you to sync your other Apple stuff. They're just really obsessed with getting you in their ecosystem. And so when I try to, like, put the RSS feed into Apple Podcasts, they're like, "Nuh-uh, you gotta have an Apple account." And I'm like, "All right, I'll go make an Apple account." They're like, "Nope, nope, where's your iPhone? I don't see an iPhone." I'm like, "Okay, well, so I'm gonna try to find a workaround." But I do definitely need to get that going. It's been, the podcast have been going almost a year now. It still is not in a lot of these places that it could be. But I found some newfound motivation to do some of that stuff because I was looking at Spotify just moments before recording this, and I was like, shoot, there's actually like a couple people watching on Spot or listening on Spotify now, which is cool. Hello to everybody on Spotify. If you're from Spotify, say hello, and leave a comment. I want to know how exactly all that comment stuff works on Spotify. I did a test like months ago. I commented on my own show to see how it would show up, and I'm not entirely sure. Like it showed up, but it was like put on one episode. I'm not entirely sure if I can just comment on the whole. Like I don't know how this works. So comment if you're on Spotify, so I can see, and also because I want comments. So and while you're at it, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Amazon, whatever, if you're on YouTube or Spotify, you can comment like directly on the podcast there on the apps. If you're elsewhere, or even if you're in those places, you can also email the show at notjustnintendo@gmail.com. That's NOTJUSTNINTENDO@gmail.com. You can email any questions, any comments, any concerns. You can put some hot takes, right? Anything you want me to read on the show, or even if you don't want me to read it on the show, I guess, and you got to tell me though, otherwise I'll read it on the show. So, but I guess even if you don't want me to, you could still, I suppose. But, anyways, let's actually get into it and stop wasting time because those 3 people listening on Spotify are now going to stop listening as soon as I start rambling like this. So let's get into it. I did mention that I bought a couple games. I bought them like last week. I think it was like a week ago. Things are kind of blending together recently. Like, school started, for me, school started like not quite 2 months ago. And it feels like that whole span of time has been like a year. Like honestly, like I think that in the entirety, like I would say things were flying pretty fast from January all the way up to like August or so, and then things really slowed down. And so all of a sudden, it's like I feel like August to now has been like just as much time as January to August was, and so things have been real slow. And things I think will get a little bit better when Marching Band's done for time's sake and for making videos and stuff. So we'll see. But I did actually buy 2 video games. I believe it definitely was in the last 2 weeks. I couldn't remember exactly when, but it definitely was in the last 2 weeks. Those 2 games, to not stall any further, were Pac-Man World Re-Pac. Of course, the Switch version, Switch 1 version. I talked about last episode how I had bought Pac-Man World Re-Pac 2, which is not the best name for a video game, but that was on Switch 2. So I bought Pac-Man World Re-Pac 2 on Switch 2, and then I also have now bought Pac-Man World Re-Pac 1 on Switch 1. So I guess that's appropriate, right? But it's funny because Pac-Man World Re-Pac 2, I should probably stop saying the full name, is not on Switch 1, and the first game is not on Switch 2. So it's a little strange how that works. Now, of course, they're both on like other platforms and stuff, but I like playing things on a Nintendo console, obviously. I mean, yeah, I kind of have a podcast about it. And so for that reason, and also, I'm just a Nintendo guy. I'm in the Nintendo ecosystem. And so as long as the game runs pretty well on the Nintendo console, then I'm probably going to play it there. And I'm not usually too worried about 3D platformers. Usually I don't even bat an eye about the performance. So I did buy that game, which longtime viewers will know that I have been looking for Pac-Man World for quite a while. It's been one of the ones on my list for some time, and of course, after buying Pac-Man World 2, it was even higher on my list, because, with most games, game series, I should say, I like to play them in order, right? For me, it's, I prefer to play them in chronological order, or if there isn't really any sort of story or anything sort of through line like that, just in release order. It's usually my preferred way to play things. But with Pac-Man World, I was just going to let it go. I figured, you know what, it's not really a big deal if I play the games in order. And so I was going to just start Pac-Man World 2, but then I happened to stumble upon Pac-Man World 1 for the first time in quite a while. I haven't seen that game in a couple of years. So that was a little surprising. So that was definitely a welcome surprise, though. And I did start playing it. I guess we could talk about that first, even though chronologically it doesn't make sense when compared to the other game as far as when I played them. But I don't think it really matters too much. So we'll talk about that first. So Pac-Man World Re-Pac. I started playing it on Switch 1 a few days ago. Last week, I want to say it was Wednesday. No, it must have been Thursday. No, it was Wednesday. It was Wednesday. Never mind. So Wednesday evening, I started playing Pac-Man World Re-Pac, and so far, I've played, I think, like 2 hours or something. Supposedly, you can beat it in like 5 or so. I think I'm going to beat it faster than that, to be honest. I'm looking more like 3.5 to 4. So I will probably have beat this next time, I would imagine. Pac-Man World Re-Pac. It's a very short game, and the second game, I think, is about the same length. It might be just a little bit longer, but it's not very long either. So both these games are not super long. It's, honestly, it is a fairly generic 3D platformer from that PS1 to PS2 era. Right, obviously these games originally came out on the PS1. But yeah, I mean, after games like Mario 64, and then of course like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and that, they were just all sorts of like 3D platformers spammed around. And some of them were good. Some people liked Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper. I mean, obviously the big ones like Crash Bandicoot, Mario 64. A lot of people like Spyro, but there were also a lot that were just not not nearly as good, or not nearly as well received, and Pac-Man World, I think, kind of falls somewhere in the middle, where it wasn't like completely forgotten about. Like, some people still liked it, and it also helped, of course, that it had the Pac-Man branding, so it had a big IP behind it. But Pac-Man World definitely never broke through as one of those big, like, tent poles of the PS1, 64, PS2, GameCube, Xbox era. It was never quite that big. And for good reason. I mean, you play the game, it's literally just not as good. So, it's not a terrible game, right? There's things I like about it, but it's literally just not as good a game. Now, I don't actually know exactly what all the Re-Pac versions of these games has added. I really am not super familiar with the originals. I have not played them, and I've seen a little bit of footage, but not like a ton. I haven't really paid much attention. So, to be honest with you, I don't really entirely know how to judge this remake per se, because I haven't played the originals. So I'm more just talking about the merit of the game, in the Re-Pac version, regardless of whether or not it was well updated. So the Re-Pac version of the game, the first one at least, I shouldn't talk about the second one yet, because I don't know. When I first loaded it up, you're met with like an opening cutscene, which was a little surprising. I mean, I guess I should have expected some weird little setup, but yeah, it was like a whole thing. There was like some evil guy, I don't know, he sent the ghosts to go capture Pac-Man, but they accidentally captured Pac-Man's family. I know, spoilers, I'm sorry. Now you can't go play Pac-Man World Re-Pac. But anyways, I mean, it's really like it's worse than Mario as far as like depth. But I really don't care. Like, I'm just not. I'm like, who cares? I don't really care too much about story, generally speaking, especially in platformers. Like, it just does not bother me whether there's a story or not. So, story, whatever, blah blah blah. And then you finally get into the gameplay, right? And you start out. I think you started out on like a pirate ship level. And I started walking around, and immediately I was like, oh my gosh, this game runs horribly, right? I was like, oh my gosh, I really messed up here buying the Switch version. I was like, all right, I'm just going to stop playing this and go try to find a different version of the game. Like, I was like, all right, well, that's it. Like, I'm done. But turns out, I actually went into the settings menu. I was like, maybe there is a performance mode or something. Turns out there is a performance mode, which I find kind of weird. I did not expect a performance mode, first of all, on a Nintendo port, right? It's only really in the Switch 2 generation, just now, that we're finally seeing some performance modes on Nintendo games, or and also just games that came out on Nintendo platforms. Usually, they leave out the performance and quality mode tick, because usually they have to put the game in somewhat of a performance mode already because they're working with underpowered hardware, and so I really didn't expect there to be a performance mode on the Switch 1 version, and honestly, at all. It's shocking to me that they would even have a visual mode or graphic mode or quality mode or whatever they call it for a game like Pac-Man World Re-Pac. Like, is anybody really that concerned with like seeing the, I don't know, the water? Like, what's there to see? Like, I'm a little confused why this game needs to have like, 4K graphics or something. Obviously, it doesn't on the Switch 1 version, but you get what I'm saying. Like, and I guess I'm assuming this must be the same way with the other versions of the game on other consoles. But yeah, it was very jarring. I don't know what was up with it. I'm not sure if it just ran at 30, because generally 30 frames per second doesn't bug me, obviously, right? I'm not sure if it was that I had been playing a lot of platformers that run at 60, or maybe it was an unstable 30. Maybe it was buffering a little bit, and maybe that was what was bothering me. But yeah, I started walking around, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, I'm playing. I don't even know. I don't even know how to describe it. It was really bad. Like, it was honestly one of the worst performing things I've ever seen. But then as soon as I turned the performance mode on, haven't had an issue since. So if you're going to play this game, I highly recommend playing on the performance mode, because you really don't need the graphical mode, and it's honestly unbearable trying to play it on the graphic mode or quality mode or whatever they call it. Who cares? So play it on the performance mode, and it's in the settings menu. And you have to go actually change it. But as soon as I did that, the game got a lot better. I walked around, beat the levels. I guess there's really not a ton to talk about, really, is there? Weird thing about Pac-Man World, I would say the levels are more aligned with. Um, there's probably a better example that I'm not thinking of, but I would compare it almost to like Super Mario 3D World, right? Where you have these levels that are fairly short. They're not like super short, like some other games, but they're fairly short and they're self-contained, right? There's no big sprawling areas. There's a couple collectibles, but not a ton. Um, yeah, a lot, like, some platforming challenges here and there, but it really not. I want to say not that interesting, because actually I think that's kind of giving Super Mario 3D World some, it's lacking some credit, because Super Mario 3D World is a great game. I think in a lot of ways it is very interesting, but Pac-Man World, I think, in level design, with the fact that everything is so fragmented and their levels are very short, I think it does actually feel kind of like Super Mario 3D World, but I don't think it's nearly as good. Like Pac-Man World, yeah, Pac-Man World, not nearly as good a game as a game like Super Mario 3D World, and I didn't really expect it to be. I had heard mixed things about the Pac-Man World games already, but I still wanted to play them just because I'm a platforming fan. And so I do kind of like the first game so far, and again, I think it's mostly just because I'm a fan of platformers and 3D platformers specifically. I do like it, I just like the feeling of playing a platformer. I like the mechanics and stuff. I don't think there's anything wrong with the mechanics in Pac-Man World. It's just not all that interesting, to be honest. I mean, it has some, I guess, decent theming, but it's like there's hardly any enemies. All of the enemies are defeated in the exact same fashion, except for the ones that you just can't defeat without getting a power-up pellet. Um, yeah, there's just not a whole lot going on, to be honest, in a lot of regards. So if you're not specifically a platforming fan, right, and you're just somebody that happens to like a couple platformers, some of the really high ticket ones, then this game is probably not for you. Unless you just really like old games, in which case, play the original version anyway, probably. Like, if you're super into just playing stuff from that era, then maybe the original versions. But as far as playing the Re-Pac version, like, you really only play it if you're super into 3D platformers. Is really the only reason I would recommend it. Or maybe if you want to buy Pac-Man World Re-Pac 2 on Switch 2, because there's just not a whole lot coming out, and there's not really a 3D Mario game or anything, then maybe. But yeah, generally speaking, I would say this isn't really the game. And I know a lot of people already have had these opinions. This isn't anything too groundbreaking for me, but yeah, it's really the thing that's for platforming fans only. It's not for the wide audience. It's fine. It's not a bad game. It's not a great game. It's pretty. Um, It's like a 6 out of 10 maybe. But because I like 3D platformers, it'll probably end up being more like a 7 or 8 in my mind. So that's not too bad. Nothing wrong with a 5 or a 6 out of 10 here and there, but it's just not the kind of thing that you want to rush out and spend your time on. The good news is the games are very cheap, right? I mean, you can get even physical copies for, 20, 30, or on Switch, and for Pac-Man World Re-Pac 2. The second one on Switch 2 is like $30. So I guess they're good for that, right? If you want to build up your physical collection, there you go. So I don't know. I've played, I think, about half the game, Pac-Man World Re-Pac 1 on the Switch 1, and I'm not really engaging in many of the collectibles. I get the ones I see along the way, right? So I'm not like just blasting through the levels. If I collect a fruit, because that's one of the main mechanics, you'll find the fruit laying around. And if you collect the fruit, you can then go back usually to like a locked door and you can get a collectible, you can get more points, right? You're collecting like points and stuff. And if you do that, then you don't really get anything. You get like extra spins on a roulette wheel at the end of the level that you can get extra lives from, which I don't think you're really ever probably going to need extra lives. The only reason why you would ever need extra lives in this game is if you spent your lives like dying trying to get the fruit to get extra lives, right? So if you're blasting through these levels not worrying about collectibles, then you're never going to die. And if you are getting the collectibles, then they're going to give you a bunch of free lives anyway. So there's really not any difficulty. The bosses are very easy. So, it's just one of those things. Like, I don't think it's the best designed game, and it makes sense why these games have not really been remembered as anything too stellar. So it is what it is. But like I said, I'm trying to play all the 3D platformers I can, all the platformers I can just in general, and these are ones that are well known, even if they're not even if most people haven't played them, most people at least are familiar. And so there definitely is something to be said about, hey, like, this is one of the ones I got to check off the list, just to say that I've played all these platformers, right? And I still have some fun while doing it, so it's not like a complete like waste of my time. Otherwise, I probably want to play it, right? Um, so yeah, Pac-Man World Re-Pac. I'm not done. I probably will be done next week. I probably won't have a ton more to say about it. To be honest, I'll probably go through a little rundown of the theming of each of the worlds, and that'll probably be about it. Like, I don't have much to say. So there's that. That's pretty much it. Pac-Man World Re-Pac. I was going to start Metroid Prime here pretty soon. Metroid Prime Remastered, that is. And then I kind of got a little distracted by Pac-Man World. So I will probably have started that for next week, but we'll see what happens. It'll depend on what happens next week after Marching Band ends. If I jump right into playing a lot of games or if I get sidetracked with other things. We'll see. So that's Pac-Man World Re-Pac. I guess I should probably stop saying that name. If this was a video and not just a podcast episode, I'd put a little counter of how many times I said Pac-Man World Re-Pac, or Pac-Man World 2 Re-Pac, but there's no like video to go along with this, so there's nowhere to put it. So you guys, somebody email the show and let me know how many times I said Pac-Man World Re-Pac. Make a little list, right? If you want to put Pac-Man World Re-Pac and Pac-Man World 2 Re-Pac on their own separate lists, and go for it, but I think that'd be interesting. All right, so that's that. I did talk a little bit last week about having played Uncharted. The first one, Uncharted, on the Nathan Drake collection. I played a little bit of that. I have not actually played any more of that. I kind of got away from it. Or maybe I played a little bit more. Maybe like another like half an hour or something like 2 weeks ago. But it's not, like, I've not played much. So I don't really have anything else to say on that. So really it's been Pac-Man World Re-Pac and like Marching Band. It's actually kind of been the big things. Yeah, I mean some other stuff. But anyways. So a lot of stuff, a lot of homework and stuff. So I haven't played as many video games, mostly just played Pac-Man World. A couple days after the last podcast came out, I was playing Kirby and the Forgotten Land. So some of you may be wondering, if you listened to last episode, what happened to that game, right? Because I haven't talked about that. Kirby and the Forgotten Land and I had a little bit of a falling out. So Kirby and the Forgotten Land came out, the Switch 2 edition came out on August 28th, right? I picked it up on launch day. I beat the game. Oh gosh, I should know this stuff. This is why I have my little book here with all my stuff. When did I beat not Pac-Man World? Pac-Man World Re-Pac. There we go. Add one to the counter. Let's see. I beat Kirby and the Forgotten Land on September 10th. Okay. And then yeah, last week. So I spent like 10 hours on it. Then last week, and actually for a few weeks up until that point, really since September 10th, I had been working on the game off and on in hopes of 100%ing it, right? My plan was to 100% it. And so, for those who don't know, I've talked about this quite extensively at this point, but Kirby and the Forgotten Land, there's 6 worlds in the main game. This is the original game that was released on the Switch 1. The Switch 2 edition, pretty similar. Only main difference is a couple extra levels, which we'll talk about later, and then also the performance upgrade. So it looks better and it runs better. It runs at 60 frames, and I think maybe it runs in 1440 docked. I could be wrong. I think it might. I don't know. It's hard to say. It definitely looks nicer. I've looked at Switch 1 footage and Switch 2 footage. It looks sharper. There's some sort of resolution bump. I don't know the exact specs. And then the frame rate is now 60 instead of 30. So that's the main difference. And then there's also the extra levels. So there's 6 main worlds in the original game. There's also a 7th world that you get after beating the game. It's like a post-game world. And I was working a little bit on that. And then I hadn't tried last time the 2 starry worlds. So there's, or it's not actually 2 starry worlds. It's the equivalent of 2 worlds worth of levels, because there's only a couple levels in each world, and there's like every world has a couple levels. So when you add them together, you get about 2 worlds worth of levels. So there's roughly 9 worlds in the game, kind of, with 3 of them being post-game, if you want to kind of think about it that way. So roughly a third of the content is post-game. Now, playing through the actual game was great, right? And what I did while playing through the game is I would get all the collectibles I stumbled across, but I wasn't really necessarily trying to 100% it per se, right? So if I found things, if I found objectives, then I would complete them as I played the level. But I wasn't too worried about, other stuff, right? I did actually buy a lot of the figurines. There's the gacha machines where you can get like 4, and then at the end of the game you get a 5th set of different figurines and stuff that you can collect, just as another thing towards 100% completion. I did a bunch of those. I did the whole first 3 sets. I think I finished. I didn't finish the 4th set, and I didn't finish the bonus set at the end of the game. But yeah, I finished a lot of those. I did a lot of extra stuff in the hub world, and I was having a blast. It was great. I was like, all right, I'm on 100% this game. It's gonna be great. Well, then I started the post game world. And the post-game world, I think the level design kind of drops off a cliff, right? I think they reused some areas for the post-game world. And to be honest, it's just not all that interesting. Like, when you're playing the post-game world, it feels like there's less of an objective, right? They give you an objective. You've got to, save a lion's soul or something. It's stupid. It's like some weird thing. Who cares? But it feels like there's actually less going on, because, you're not really as focused as getting to the end of the level. You're actually just, literally just looking for these orbs. And so the objective of the game now becomes collecting. And I like when there's collecting in a 3D platformer, but usually, and there's been a couple exceptions, usually I like something else on top of that, right? I want some sort of through line, and I want the collecting to be kind of extra. The thing that fills in the gaps, right? And so that's what I love about most 3D Mario games. Odyssey, I think, goes a little too far towards collecting just for the sake of collecting. I want a big reward when I'm collecting something. And in Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the post-game level, it feels like when you're collecting these orbs, you don't really seem to get any tangible reward for it. You're just kind of walking around collecting the orbs, and they're a little too well hidden. I think most of them, you got to really it's honestly, it's very irritating. And the problem is if you go through one area of the level, there'll be this little pop-up on the bottom of your screen, and it's only there for a second, and it'll be like, oh, you've collected all the orbs in this area, and then you can move on, right? If you're trying to 100% the area, which I was, right? Because I didn't want to have to replay all these levels. I was already going to replay the rest of the game. I didn't want to have to replay all these levels too. And so I was trying to get all the orbs before I moved on to the next area, and what would happen invariably, quite often, not every area, but I would say probably every other, I would get to the end of the area, and I want to have collected all the orbs. So now I'd have to backtrack, and I'd walk back, and I'd look around. I had to go through the whole area 2-3 times, whatever. And I didn't want to exit the level or continue, because for some stupid reason, I don't know whose idea this was, it's one of the platformers where your collectibles don't store. And so if I beat the whole level and then come back, now I've got to actually, if I want to go get the last couple collectibles I missed, then I've got to beat the whole level again. I can't just come in and get the 2 collectibles and leave. I've got to beat the whole freaking level again. And these levels are long. Like, they're really long. Even if you're not collecting anything. You're just, like, walking. Just walking. You don't even have to fight enemies. You pretty much just walk undeterred. Like a solid few minutes. Like, it's like 3, 4 minutes, 5 minutes maybe. You're just walking through this level to get to the end. After collecting, like, your one spirit orb that you missed at the beginning of the level. Like, it's stupid. It's honestly stupid. It's obnoxious to 100%. The post-game world in Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And I realized, I was like, you know what? Why even bother then, right? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? This is stupid. Uh, there were a couple things in Bonanza even, right? Bonanza was a game I loved. There were a couple of things that were like, why am I doing this, right? With the ancient discs. I grinded out gold to finish up the ancient, or I grinded that area where you get gold to finish up the banana gems and the ancient discs. And but with that, at least I only did that for like 2 hours, and that was after putting like 60 hours into this game. I was dead set on 100%ing it, and the whole time I was still having fun. But the monotony of Kirby, it was really kind of bugging me. And then I went and I was like, I'll just get away from it for a while. I'll go play the Star-Crossed World levels, right? And a lot of people, since the game came out, which, I mean, at this point, it's been a few months, a lot of people were very negative when the game came out about the Star-Crossed World extra levels. It said, oh, the game, there's no reason to buy the Switch 2 edition. It's literally just the same game on Switch 1, but with some bad levels added on. And rehash. They're all rehashed. There's nothing new. And I was like, oh, come on, surely they can't be that bad, whatever, right? No, they're really that bad. Like, honestly, there's just nothing going on. Like, these starry levels, they just kind of suck. Like, really, like, there's so little. It's really, again, you're just kind of walking through the level, collect a few things here and there, but the collectibles aren't as interesting, and they're just kind of just plopped around. Like, it doesn't feel like as much care and attention, and surely not as much was given, right, as it was in the main game. And so, for me, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, it could be potentially just because I had played a lot of it, but I think mostly it really is just the design got worse. So the 6 worlds in the main game are stellar, right? And I would, part of me almost wants to go back and get all the collectibles and all of those, because they were great. But as soon as you get to the post-game world and the 2 DLC worlds, they kind of suck. Like, they really just kind of suck. They're not really all that interesting. And so I figured, you know what? All right, I've played enough Kirby. I'm done. So I'm done. I finished. There you go. So that's my experience with Kirby and the Forgotten Land Switch 2 edition. I am done with it. I may at some point replay it, right? But I'm not going to pick up where I left off. I'm done. I've closed the book on that. I'm not upset with the game. I still think overall it's a great game, and it'll probably still rank pretty highly on my list. But at one point, it was probably going to be top 5, and now, I don't think it's going to be top 5. I think it's going to be like 10 or something. So it's definitely fallen out a little bit in my estimation after seeing the post-game content and the Switch 2 edition content. But the main game is still great, and I still recommend everybody play it. However, I don't think you necessarily need the Switch 2 edition, right? If you've got a Switch 2, yeah, it might honestly be worth getting the Switch 2 edition, if only because of the performance upgrade, right? Like, I didn't play the original game in 30 frames per second, but I feel like that wouldn't be great, because I think that one of the game's greatest strengths was its smoothness. It felt very smooth of a 3D platformer. It was honestly one of the most smooth 3D platformers I've ever played. I thought it was very impressive how smooth it was. And it may still be pretty smooth on the Switch 1 version, but you're not going to get quite that same experience. So I would honestly still recommend getting the Switch 2 edition, even if the extra levels kind of suck, just for the extra performance patch. I guess the problem is it is a whole extra $20, so I don't know. It is kind of just on you at this point, honestly. Although you could probably save a little bit of money by buying like a pre-owned Switch 1 version and then buying the upgrade pack, and you could probably end up getting away with, like, spending or saving like 30, 40 bucks. So I don't know. It's on you if you want to play the game. I know a lot of people already have played the game. It's been out for a handful of years now, like 4 years or 3 years, I think. But, if you want to play the game, it's a good game. It's a good game. I don't think it's worth 100%ing. And if I was somebody that didn't play a lot of games, if I had time for that kind of stuff, if I had patience for that kind of stuff, and I do think I have quite a bit of patience, then I surely would 100% it. But in this situation, it just was not super appealing. So I left. I'm done. That's it. All right. And again, I'm not upset with the game. The game was great, and that's the end. So that's all I have to say about Kirby and the Forgotten Land. This is probably the last I'll speak on it, because I don't plan on going back to it anytime soon, right? I mean, maybe I'll do like a replay through or something in a few years' time. But I'm probably only going to talk about it in reference to other games, or my end of the year list, my top 50s, that kind of stuff. So it'll come up again, but I'm kind of done, like with Bonanza and with Mario Kart World and that kind of stuff. So we're done with Kirby. Close the book on that one. And now it's really, there's what else is going on in the world, in the world of video games. Obviously, we'll have a news segment here in just a moment, but I do want to talk about just a couple other things. So Ghost of Yotoi came out earlier this month. I believe that was actually since the last podcast episode, or I think it was before the last podcast episode. So I think last podcast episode, Ghost of Yotei, was already out. And what was the other? There was another big thing that came out this month, and now I'm like blanking. I don't know. But obviously, also since the last show, Pokemon Legends ZA came out. So I bought a few weeks ago Pokemon Legends Arceus. I am planning to start that soon, but I have not yet. And I'm not really too worried about rushing through it to get to ZA. I can play ZA in 3 years, if that's how long it takes me to play Arceus. Like, I don't care. Like, it really does not bug me. I'm glad that there is another one to play when I get to it, but I'm really not rushed or bothered about getting to Legends ZA. So it seems like the kind of thing that I do want to play when it comes out, as long as I like Arceus. I haven't played Arceus. Maybe I'll end up not liking Arceus. But my plan is to play Arceus, and then if I like it, to continue to ZA. But I don't know if it'll be immediately. I don't know. So we'll see what happens. I do think I'll start Arceus before the end of the year. I don't think I'll beat it before the end of the year, though. I think it'll end up being something for next year, even if I start it this year. So that's where I'm at with that game. And then the other thing, I did mention I bought 2 games, and I only talked about one. I also bought Splatoon 2, which you may know is a thing that I've also been looking for quite a while at this point. Honestly, I've been kind of like looking for it since like July or so, because that's when I beat the original Splatoon. Yeah, my first experience with Splatoon, and I've talked about this at length, but I'm going to kind of go through it again because, I don't know, I just like to yap. So in December 2022, was it 2? No, December 2023, sorry. I bought Splatoon 3, and I've played a few online matches there at the end of 2023, and that was it. That's all I ever did. I've just never been into online games, into multiplayer stuff. I've just never really been into that kind of thing. And I started the single player campaign for like 30 minutes, and then I was done. I just wasn't too into it. And so earlier this year, honestly just a few months ago, I picked up Splatoon 1 on the Wii U, which I had bought earlier this year, like early in the year, like March or something. And I started playing it in July, beat it in just a couple of days. It was great. I love Splatoon 1. It's going to rank very highly on my list. I think it was a fantastic single-player campaign, and I'm not really into shooters. I'm not really into online stuff, but the single player of Splatoon 1 was fantastic. So I would say I am probably a Splatoon fan, but I got to play the other ones. And so I've been looking for quite a while for Splatoon 2, because I had Splatoon 1 and I had Splatoon 3. I figured I want to play them all 3. Why would I not just play them in order? So I've been looking for Splatoon 2, which, believe it or not, Splatoon 2 is actually not the easiest game to find physically. Obviously, it's a very old Switch 1 game. It's a first-year game, 2017. But it sold pretty well, so I am a little surprised. I don't know if it's just that a lot of people didn't trade that one in to GameStop and that kind of stuff, and it just didn't get circulated as much. A lot of people held on to it, or what exactly happened, but for whatever reason, it's pretty tough to find Splatoon 2. So I did finally find it on the same day as Pac-Man World Re-Pac, which is kind of weird. Add that one to the telly. But yeah, it's kind of weird that I actually finally found the game, but I'm very happy about it, obviously. And I don't know, I might actually get around to playing that this year. I know there's really not much year left, but it is definitely something I want to get into pretty quickly here, because I'm definitely really excited about it. So I don't know, maybe I will get to Splatoon 2 this year. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't be too heartbroken if I had to go and wait till next year, though, as well. So we'll see what happens. The good news as well, I have the Switch Online expansion pack, obviously, and the Octo expansion, the bonus DLC with a campaign, is also free with Switch Online expansion pass. So I'll get a whole extra campaign on top of Splatoon 2 to play, and then I'll get to play Splatoon 3, which I already own. And then the only other thing after Splatoon 3 is is it Side Order, I think is what it's called, is another campaign you can play single player. So I'll probably try that at some point next year as well, but I'll have to actually buy that DLC separately. and then that'll leave me done with Splatoon. So there's really not a whole lot of Splatoon that's came out. It's only 10 years old. Um, but yeah, I definitely want to play all the Splatoon games, and I'm on my way to doing that. Obviously, part of my motivation for playing through Splatoon, first of all, I wanted to play something on the Wii U because I hadn't played anything on the Wii U in quite a while. So that was thing number one. Thing number two was just that it had been sitting on my shelf for a while, and it was something I was kind of curious about because I'd never tried before. And then obviously the other big thing was Splatoon Raiders getting announced earlier this year, back in like April or May or something. So Splatoon Raiders got announced, and so I was like, ooh, I got to play all the Splatoon games so I can play Raiders when that comes out. I mean, I could still play Raiders when it came out, but I figure I want to play all the Splatoon games, might as well play them on the build up to Raiders, which I think is going to come out next year, but I don't really know yet. So we'll see what happens. But I am still expecting Splatoon Raiders next year. Like I said, we'll just have to see what happens. So who knows? That game may come, it may not. I mean, it'll come at some point, but we'll see if it comes next year or if it's not till like 2027. So. But yes, that is everything I bought. That's everything I played, I think. I guess I actually did, I should say. I am back to playing Mario's Picross. I've been playing Mario's Picross sometimes at nights for, I'll hop in for 10, 20 minutes and do a few levels. And it's cool. It'll be a game that I beat, but it's not something I'm going to, like, really talk about on the podcast. I did beat, in Mario's Picross, there's, like, 3 categories of Picross. There's easy Picross, and then there's 2 levels of like normal Picross, and they're called some like random things, like it's like leaf and fire or something. It's not actually leaf and fire, but it's like just 2 random things. I can't remember what they're called. But anyways, and so I beat easy Picross, so I'm like a third of the way through the levels in Mario's Picross. I don't know if I'll beat it by the end of the year. I don't really care if I do. It'll be on my list, but it'll probably be very low on my list. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a great game. It's fine, whatever. It's a Picross game. Who cares? It's not something I'm going to like put very high on my list, but maybe it'll be my honorary number 1 on my list. So we'll see. But I am still playing Mario's Picross. If you want to count that as a game I'm playing, then sure. It only kind of counts, though, I think. So. But that's that. So I think with that, we're going to be done with the opening segment of the show, and I guess kind of the main segment of the show. And now we'll get into some news and stuff for our second segment, and that'll make for the end of the show as well. So I'll see you guys after the musical break. Alright, everyone, welcome back. Here we are to talk about some news and stuff going on in video games. There's not really a ton to talk about today, so this episode will probably be a little bit shorter. I know this is also coming out a little later than it was supposed to. I'm sorry about that. Once again, this is probably the last time this should happen due to marching band related things. School will still be busy, obviously, but I think just taking one of those big things out of the equation will significantly help the time stuff. So, okay, let's talk about some news. So there's been some leaks, quite a few weeks in a row, honestly days and days in a row, about the next generation for PlayStation and Xbox. Obviously, that's the next big piece of hardware coming out from anybody, with the Switch 2 coming out finally. That's obviously what all the attention has diverted to the PS6 and to the next Xbox. If there is going to be a next Xbox, I know I talked quite extensively last week about how there potentially couldn't be an Xbox, or there potentially could not be an Xbox. So a lot of people have brought things up. There's been a lot of leaks here in the last, few months or whatever. A lot of people on the side of, hey, there's no Xbox, right? There's some people from Microsoft like, hey, there's no Xbox. But there's also people from Microsoft. Again, these are all allegedly. I doubt most of them even are. But some of them are like, oh, no, there totally is an Xbox. So it's kind of... it's obviously quite divisive. Honestly, I think I'm kind of leaning more towards there will be an Xbox. I know I kind of talked last week as if there won't be, but I don't know. I still think there probably will be, most likely. I just think it's fairly possible that there isn't. Either way, though, I don't think the next Xbox is going to be great news. for somebody like me, because I'm pretty confident with some of the leaks, but also just off my own vibes. I'm pretty sure the next Xbox is definitely not going to have a disc drive. Um, and no physical media. Now, as far as the PS6, I could see it going either way. The leaks are saying that it will have one, or there'll at least be a model with and a model without. In the latest leaks, we're even saying that they could potentially have backwards compatibility with the PS5 and the PS4. So supposedly they're not leaving the PS4 behind, which I find surprising, but I don't know. I guess it sort of makes sense. So I don't know. I mean, if the PS6 comes out and it has a disc drive, then I might be interested in the PS6, right? But if the Xbox comes out, actually, honestly, even if the Xbox has a disc drive, I'm probably done buying Xboxes or any, like, maybe old ones, whatever. But as far as like buying a new Xbox during its generation, like, I'm good. Like, I just have absolutely no interest in doing so. Their technology, it falls apart. It's not as durable. It's just a lot of problems. I talk about them all the time. I don't want to like go into a whole tangent again, but there's a guy that works at Microsoft. He was interviewed. Sarah Bond is the current Xbox president. Now, I find it really funny because Bond, like, in the interview, in the article that I'm reading here, Game Rant, they'll be like, in an interview with Variety, Bond said, and every time I'm like, what, James Bond? But no, Sarah Bond. Sarah Bond says, we have our next-gen hardware in development. They were talking about, obviously, whether or not there was supposed to be an Xbox, because there's been a lot of leaks lately. But, the gamer, or not, sorry, not the gamer, Game Rant puts in the caveat, and I think it's a good caveat to point out that potentially the next hardware in development could be something other than a console, right? I mean, they could be doing some other, they just did the ROG Xbox Ally and the ROG Xbox Ally X, right? And those were made by Asus. They could be doing another thing like the MetaQuest Xbox Edition, whatever that they're doing. They could be doing something else like that, right? They could be doing another revision of the Series X and S. Like, who knows, right? Now, personally, the implication for sure is that they are making an Xbox, like a proper one, but that's not really necessarily what they're saying. So it's a little difficult to know for sure. And obviously, nothing's going to be completely confirmed. But it is definitely a strong implication from the president of Xbox that there is in fact an Xbox. But we'll see what happens. Honestly, who knows? So, yeah. Speaking more on Xbox, there was a insider. This was, I want to say, like a month ago or so, that was saying that the next Halo game, which was announced to be in development, we don't know anything about it, but the next Halo game is in development. It's probably been in development for like a number of years, but they just finally confirmed it because obviously, I'm assuming it's getting close, right? My guess is that if the next Xbox comes out, then Halo will be a launch title. And if not, then, I don't know, it'll come out in a couple of years. So, next Halo game is in fact in development. There was an insider like a month ago that was speculating that it might be using generative AI in its development for artwork, for coding, all this stuff. Or I don't think it was for coding. I think it was more just for the artwork and the sound design and stuff. And Xbox has said they're in fact not using generative AI. But they may be using some sort of AI for emails and other tasks, which I find strange. So, I don't know. You got to know. I'm sure most of you guys do know. When I talk about a lot of these things, I'm not experts on these topics. I'm more just kind of giving my perspective. I don't know. Who knows? But yes, Jez Corden was the guy, said the next Halo game is not using generative AI in ongoing development or in art assets. Xbox Game Studios has not mandated any of its subsidiaries to use generative AI in game development. Usage of generative AI is likely restricted to sending emails and other tasks unrelated to game development. So that's according to an Xbox insider. So I don't know. It's insider versus insider, right? I mean, I'm not here to speculate that they are using AI. Much as I give Xbox, I complain about Xbox all the time. I'm not here to say that they're using generative AI. If they were using generative AI, then they'd probably have more than one game come out every 3 years. So they're not. But it is what it is. All right, this is an Xbox, right? We've all seen those ads here. I think the first time I saw one, I think was at the Super Bowl. Um, or I didn't watch the Super Bowl, but I saw the ad, like it aired on that weekend, and it was a Super Bowl ad, and it was the first ad with the whole "this is an Xbox" thing, and the idea is, any tablet, any smartphone, any TV, VR headset, any of that stuff that has access to Xbox Game Pass is thereby an Xbox, which obviously feels to me like an excuse to. Obviously, they're trying to widen the brand, but it really seems like they're trying to push against the idea of a console. And who knows? I mean, it's hard to say, but it seems like even if there is going to be a console this next time, this is an Xbox marketing strategy is definitely in an attempt to make it so that there's not an Xbox, years down the line, because it's obviously a lot more profitable for them to just, rely on like phone technology and stuff, and just everybody just plays the games on their smartphones. It works out better for them in the long run. Well, it doesn't really, but they think it does. I think it won't actually end out better for them in the long run because I think it'll actually have, drastic ramifications on the industry. But in the short term, it definitely works out better for them if people are just playing on their phones and stuff. So we'll see. But anyways, this is an Xbox. The former Blizzard president, Mike Ybarra, called the marketing campaign the wrong move for the Xbox brand. He also said that only a moron would continue to make consoles when all games were third-party releases. That this is an Xbox was a wrong idea at the wrong time. If games don't, this isn't a quote. If games don't have parity between a console and other devices, it simply does not make sense to call these other platforms an Xbox, which could confuse consumers. I don't think anyone's getting too confused over this, but it's just another instance where people are upset about the whole Xbox. This is an Xbox marketing thing, and I'm reading a Game Rant article, and they attached this meme, and this is an Xbox. This is an Xbox for your lap, and it's a laptop. This is an Xbox that tags along, and it's a ROG Ally. This is a cat box. It's literally a cat like cradle. This is an Xbox that goes on the walls, and it's a TV. This is an Xbox that makes calls. It's a phone. This is a bento box. This is an Xbox on the inside. This is an Xbox that you wear. It's via your headset. This is still an Xbox, and it's the Xbox Series S. So yeah, I've seen a lot of those kind of things myself too. The Switch 2 came out, and everybody's like, "This is an Xbox," right? Because they had Cyberpunk's not a Microsoft thing, but what was trying to think what it was. It was some smaller Microsoft published thing that came out on the Switch 2, and the idea was, oh, well, it plays an Xbox game, so therefore it's an Xbox. Anyways, whatever. But it is interesting to have people like the former president of Blizzard, Ybarra, speaking out against Xbox. Nate the Hate, a while ago, or actually, I don't. Yeah, I think it was actually him last time as well. He leaked that there could potentially be a Final Fantasy IX remaster in development, potentially after the Final Fantasy VII trilogy of remakes came out. They would move on to 9, or they would, potentially do it just as its own thing. Somebody tagged him a few days ago now on X. He asked, "Hey Nate the Hate, do you have news about Final Fantasy IX's remake, or is it canceled, or is it still in Square Enix's plans?" Nate the Hate says, "Have no new information to share. For now, I'd assume the game is on ice and is unknown whether Square Enix will return to it or not." So obviously, even if it's not a cancellation, it could be some sort of a soft cancellation. If assuming it's not a cancellation, then I assume Final Fantasy IX, if it's going to get remade, is not going to be for a while. So I mean, I would be totally down for a Final Fantasy IX remake. I intend to play through all the Final Fantasy games. I got to finish up 3, and then I can continue through through 4, 5, and 6, and then I'll get into like the more modern ones, I guess. So we'll see. Really, I'm excited for 6 and kind of 7, but really 6 is the one I'm most excited for, and 5 as well. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't know, but Final Fantasy IX having a remake would be something I think would be pretty cool. All right, yeah, Ghost of Yotei. That was out last show. Ghost of Yotei was already out. I don't think I really touched on it because I haven't played it, but I did hear. Honestly, I didn't really hear much that first week or so. Now I'm seeing a lot of more positive things. Sucker Punch says Sucker Punch, the developers behind the game, say, "I see it as a chapter is done. one of the creators there that works at Sucker Punch, Jason Connell, and Ian Ryan. They did an interview about the game, and they said, "I see it as a chapter is done." So I don't know if that's necessarily saying that the Ghost of franchise, I guess, if that's the name of the franchise, is done, or if maybe they're doing a spin-off next, or what exactly is happening. Obviously, it seems to be the tendency nowadays when there's a big game series to do a trilogy of the games, but who knows? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting, right? Ghost of Yote, it's another thing that I plan to play eventually. I'm working through some of the Sucker Punch games. I'm actually working through the Infamous series. Here, I played Infamous 1 back in May. I plan to start the second one before the end of the year. And yeah, at some point I also got to play Second Son. At some point I've got to play all the Sly Cooper games. That's on one of my lists as well of things to play. And obviously Ghost of Tsushima I'm hoping to play next year. And then obviously I'll move into Ghost of Yotoi if I like it, right? If I don't like it, then I won't. But so that's kind of all I have to say about that. Ninja Gaiden 4, that's coming out. I think it already did. Came out yesterday, the 21st, I believe. It came out. Maybe it was Monday. I don't think it was Monday. I think it was Tuesday. Pretty sure. So that game's out. A while ago, this was probably a few months ago, it was all but confirmed, like heavily leaked, that Starfield would be coming to the PS5. Some people were saying it would also come to Switch too. I'm going to say probably not, or if it will, it'll be later on. But yeah, the leaks were mainly centered around Starfield on the PS5. And now, supposedly, it's like a leak on top of a leak that it won't be announced until next year. And I don't think there's any details as to when. I would guess this could be like a Summer Games Fest 2026 announcement, or potentially even a Game Awards 2026 announcement. But obviously, as soon as something's leaked like that, a lot of people assume it's because it's happening soon, right? Because generally, you find out about these things when they're upcoming. But no, in fact, in this case, they're saying that that's not the case. It's actually not coming for a little while. So I think it's another one of those attempts. Like the leakers are like, oh shoot, people are gonna think we're wrong, so they have to they have to put the caveat in, like, hey, look, this is still happening, but it's not gonna be for a little while. There was the Amazon service web outages. What's the actual AWS, the hosting service for a lot of online servers that shut down. This is a couple days ago now. Whatnot, I told you a couple weeks ago I had been buying stuff on, or not buying stuff, but entering giveaways and stuff on Whatnot. That shut down. Obviously, some Amazon apps shut down. The Fork Knife went down because that whole Epic Games ecosystem went down. Roblox went down. And I mean, like, I'm telling you, all like the the entirety of Gen Alpha was like screaming on Monday when both the Fork Knife and the Roblox servers were down. That's pretty bad news. But anyways, so that was obviously big news, not just in video games, but just across the board, across the entire world. That was a pretty important event. But obviously, it had effects in video games as well. As far as I know, all that stuff is back up. I know there were some problems with some things even as recently as today, but as far as I know, most things are back up. I'm pretty sure Fork Knife and all that stuff's back up, so it didn't really last for long. Nobody expected it to, but it is definitely still worth mentioning. Co-director of the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3, Naoki Hamaguchi. I feel like we're talking about the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy like every week, even though I haven't even played the other two games. There's just always news about it seems. I'm assuming it's probably going to get announced soon, so that's probably why. But anyways, he says that the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3, so we've had Remake, we had Rebirth, the third part, will tighten its story because players have too much to do. So they're striking a balance, they say, on the storytelling of Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. So I know there were some complaints with Rebirth. I know a lot of people loved Rebirth, but there were some complaints still that there was just a little too much going on in the open world. It felt like things were a little bloated. You could have got through the game a lot faster than a lot of people did. And so the implication is that potentially that could be the case here as well. But we'll see. I don't know. But it is interesting. I know a lot of people said that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth were quite different in a lot of different ways. and like especially with the story and stuff. So having another third different game in the trilogy, it's definitely going to lead to years and years down the road, a lot of people having opinions as to what part of the trilogy was the best. Whether it was remake, rebirth, or whatever the third one ends up being. But it's definitely going to be one of those things that we're going to be hearing about for years and years about how all three of them had different stories and all these different things. All right, Nintendo renewed the trademark for Virtual Console. Obviously, Mike Odyssey tweeted about this. Nintendo just brought back from the dead the Virtual Console name and is currently a pending trademark. Are there signs of the new NSO in Virtual Console libraries? Or is it, as like a strategy for people that excuse me. Basically, him and some other people were speculating that they could potentially be doing something like with NSO, right? They have NSO. They could potentially be doing Virtual Console for those who'd rather purchase the games individually and keep them for forever, not forever, but more close to forever. But I think this is definitely not happening. I would say like there were also some people like as soon as the Virtual Console thing got announced, a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's totally gonna be DS. We're getting DS games. It's confirmed. We're getting DS games." I think that's ridiculous as well to assume that just because they're renewing the Virtual Console trademark that we're getting DS games. Obviously, a lot of companies renew a lot of trademarks that they don't really use anymore, just in the event that they ever do, right? Or so they can refer to them, and so that nobody else can suddenly call their thing Virtual Console. Because I'm sure Nintendo's aware that a lot of people still call their NSO thing Virtual Console. I actually do all the time as well. I'll be like, Virtual Boy Virtual Console. I'm like, oh wait, no, it's not Virtual Console, but that's still what I call it a lot. Not all the time, but sometimes. I guess there's just one more thing I wanted to touch on. The UK charts this week showed that Pokemon Legends ZA was 51% Switch 2 sales and 49% Switch 1 sales. So obviously, it's not the US sales. The US sales, I think, are a little bit harder to find that data. But, or at least they're a bit, it's a bit less accurate, right? There's a lot more going on. But obviously, this is partially representative of the entire world. I assume these sales figures are pretty close throughout the world. So it is, in fact, the launch sales of Legends ZA are 40% lower than Arceus. I don't think this is really too shocking. Well, I don't know, actually. I think maybe Arceus was just a bit more revolutionary, right? It was the first time they had done something more, something like this, something with the open world and all that stuff. Maybe ZA, it's just a sequel. People aren't as, willing to hop right on board. It's also something to be said that, Arceus came out during COVID, and so there were probably a lot of people that are like, oh, I got nothing to do, might as well play the new Pokemon game, whereas it's probably not as much of a thing here with ZA. So I'm not saying ZA is failing or anything, but it is worth mentioning that it's not done quite as well as Arceus. I don't think anybody really expected it to either, right? Because of the timing of it coming out, and also because it's a sequel. Generally you don't expect sequels to sell better than their originals, but it's not always the case, right? It's not like a formula or anything, but it could be. Could be. Obviously, the biggest Switch 2 game of the year is Mario Kart World, but even with only 51% of the sale, this is for UK sales still, even with only 51% of the sales, Pokemon Legends ZA is still the second best-selling thing on the Switch, and Switch 2 in the UK, which is crazy to me, because that means that Pokemon Legends ZA has sold more than twice as well as Donkey Kong Bonanza, and it's been out nowhere near as long. I guess it's not really that shocking, to be fair, because nobody really expected Bonanza to outsell Pokemon, right? Obviously, Pokemon's going to sell really well. It's not going to be the number one thing on the console forever, but it'll be up there for sure. Good chance that something like ZA does end up being in the top 3. It won't be number 1, though. I'm pretty sure that'll be Mario Kart World, but we'll see. I guess it's probably going to be it. I'm really trying to get this out soon because I'm already late and I don't want to push it any farther. So we're going to call this good for this show. I'm sorry if things seemed a little bit rushed here towards the end. Truth be told, they were a little bit rushed here towards the end. But like I said, next episode will still be 2 weeks from now, but it shouldn't be as big an issue next week or next show because Marching Band will have ended. So hopefully have a little bit more time to play some more stuff, and hopefully there'll be more stuff to talk about on that front. I'll have more time to make the podcast, and I won't have to like rush through things like I did in this second segment. So my apologies there, but I still think there was enough in this show, and I don't think it was too terrible. Right? I could be wrong, but and then obviously after next show, the plan is to go back to weekly episodes because I'll have no marching band, so I will still be kind of busy, right? Like I'll still have some school stuff to do, but it shouldn't be anywhere near what it is right now. So we'll see what happens, but that's gonna be it from me, folks. Email the show, join the Discord, all that stuff's in the description. I'm not gonna like read it all out again. I've already probably repeated it like 3 or 4 times. So I'm going to call it good. Thanks again. See you all next, or 2 weeks from now. Goodbye.